Hey guys, it's Bella and welcome back to my channel. Today is day number 6 of my 12 days of Christmas. If you guys are enjoying these, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss a thing. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about the disappearance of William Tyrrell, and this case is huge here in Australia. It happened in New South Wales in Kendall, and I have seen so much news coverage of this. Like, it is a massive case, and it's really sad because he was just a boy. He was only 3 years old when he disappeared, and nobody knows where he is. No one knows what happened to him, and the case is still unsolved, and it's been 4 years. This happened back in 2014, and it's just a really heartbreaking case. It's really important just to keep William's image alive, make sure people know about it, share the word, spread the word. And if you know any information or you know someone that may have some information, to report that. So on the 11th of September in 2014, William's parents picked him up from daycare and his 5-year-old sister a little bit early because they were surprising them with a trip to their grandma's house, which was super exciting because they absolutely loved visiting their grandma. They lived in Sydney and their grandma lived in Kendall. So it was about a 4-hour drive, and Kendall was like this, or is this really small town. There is just over 800 people there. It is surrounded by nature and bush, and it was quiet. And William's grandmother lived on a road called Benaroon Drive, she lived directly across from the Kendall State Forest. And she also lived on a cul-de-sac, so nobody would come down the road unless they were going to their house and they lived on the street, or they were visiting someone on that street. So it was relatively safe. And they also lived at the very end of the cul-de-sac. There were no break-ins or thefts really. It was just a safe place. The driveways, like the houses, sat about 20 meters into the actual blocks of land, and there were long driveways and trees covering the driveway, so you couldn't really see in the house. It was very private and safe. I keep saying safe, but that's what it was. The house itself as well was beautiful. It was surrounded by nature, like I said, but it actually backed up onto the forest, and there were these big backyards for the kids to play in. It was just a really nice place. That's why the kids loved it. So the next morning on the 12th of September, William's dad went into town because the only problem with the house was that it just didn't really have any good reception. So he went into town to go to like a local cafe, get some Wi-Fi and make a business Skype call. And he was also just going to pop into the chemist while he was there. At about 9:45 a.m, his mother took some photos of him in a Spider-Man outfit, which he loved this Spider-Man outfit. He was such a cute kid. He loved playing dress-ups. He was 3.5 years old at the time, and he was just always smiling, always laughing, always happy, and people just loved him. Adults adored him and thought he was such a cute kid. And at daycare, all of the kids there loved him. He had 3 best friends, so he's quite a popular little man. And he was just a really playful kid. He didn't warm up to people immediately. He kind of liked to sit back, assess them, decide if he was interested in them. But then when he did show interest in them, he was just this ball of love. He loved playing dress-ups. He loved role-playing, pretending like he was a builder, and he was obsessed with Spider-Man. He had Spider-Man gumboots, Spider-Man gloves, a Spider-Man car, Spider-Man toys, and of course he also had the Spider-Man costume that he was wearing in the photo. And that photo actually, while it looks like such a cute photo, is so heartbreaking because it was taken just minutes before he disappeared. So this photo of him was actually mid-Raw. So him, his mum, and his older sister were playing like their version of hide and seek, where, someone would hide, someone would be seeking, and when the person who's hiding is found, they would roar like a lion.
It was mid-roar, which is why his mouth's wide open.
That was part of the game.
Yeah, that was the rah. And then we were playing, and I was playing Mummy Monsters, and so he's chasing me, and I'm doing the whole rah thing, and I'm chasing him, and he's giggling his head off.
So he would run up to his mum, and she would roar, and then she would run up and find him, and he would roar, and he was just giggling his head off. He loved that game. It was like his favorite game. And he was running back and forth between the veranda and the backyard, and his mum and his grandma were sitting on the veranda while they played. At some point before 10:30, his mum went inside to make a cup of tea, just really quickly. She wasn't really worried though, because she could still hear the kids playing, like she could physically hear them roaring, and their grandma was sitting out on the veranda as well. So he ran from the front of the house, down the side, under the balcony, and after a few minutes, his mum realized that she couldn't hear him anymore.
I could still hear him. He was roaring. And then nothing.
So she went outside and she couldn't see him anywhere. She asked his sister where he went. She said that he ran down the side of the house. She went and had a look, but she couldn't see him. She then went round to the front of the house where his grandma was, and neither of them could find him anywhere. So they started looking around the neighborhood and started asking the neighbors if they had seen him. The neighbors also started helping them looking in the front yards, backyards, side yards. They were looking in the surrounding bushes. One of the neighbors named Emery sharply told her it's fine, that they're gonna find him. So they all kind of thought that he had just kind of wandered off somewhere. There was also this small kind of dirt track that just led off Benaroon Drive, and it was a couple 100 meters long and led up to the cemetery. So they thought maybe he had wandered up there, but there was no trace of him. His dad also got home while they were looking, and his mum was kind of in some way hoping that maybe he'd run down the road to look for his dad's car or something, because that's something he always did, was look for his dad, look for his dad's car. And that's what a lot of people think happened as well, is because that is something he did. Like when his dad was about to get home, he would wait at the front door, or sometimes he would run down to the end of the driveway to look for the car and wait for him.
They always run to the gate normally at home and they're looking out for me and my car.
And I remember saying, "Can you see Daddy's car?" And there was no answer.
So they thought that maybe he ran to the end of the driveway looking for his dad. Maybe he saw a car that he thought was his dad's, but actually wasn't his dad's, and ran up to that. And his mum was also kind of hoping that somehow he had run and caught up with his dad before he went into town, I guess. But obviously when his dad got home, William was nowhere to be found. So his dad obviously joined in the search as well. They all looked, the family and the neighbors, for about 15 to 20 minutes before they called 000 to report him missing. Police got there within an hour, and after searching for a little while, they called in the dog squad, who had a sniff around, and they could only pick up his scent within the boundaries of his grandma's house. After that, the state emergency service volunteers were called in. There was a helicopter up in the sky by 1 p.m. and a whole bunch of residents showed up on Benaroon Drive to help the search. Police searched every single one of the 21 houses on Benaroon Drive. They checked the roofs, they checked wall cavities, they checked sheds, they checked backyards, side yards, front yards, cupboards. They were so thorough in their search. This wasn't one of those cases that we see so often in these mystery videos where the police did a shitty job, or they waited too long to search, or they didn't do the things that they were meant to do, or they compromised the crime scene. Like, they were so on top of this case from the get-go. Like, everything that was meant to be done or supposed to be done was done. The parents had a look around and then reported him missing within 20 minutes. The police showed up really soon after they called, and they looked so thoroughly. They called in the dog squad. They had helicopters up. Over 200 volunteers were out looking for him, and they searched so thoroughly. They even had divers in nearby creeks and rivers in case maybe he had fallen in, or there was an item of his clothing, because at some point during the search they changed it from a search for William to a search for anything relating to William. Clothes that could have been thrown out of a car, or anything relating to him. At this point though, they hadn't found anything, which honestly makes it pretty unlikely that he just wandered off. I mean, he was 3 years old. How far could he really get? So they set up a task force that was specifically set up just to look for William, and it was called Task Force Roseanne. It was comprised of specially trained investigators from the State Crime Command, and they were specifically trained in the unexplained disappearance of young children. On the 16th of September, just 4 days after William's disappearance, they found a small patch of blood just near a creek about 2 kilometers away from Benaroon Drive, but after testing it, they found out that this was not human blood. They also found a knife sheath, that is such a tongue twister for me to say, and a set of small footprints, but they discounted these as leads. After 2 weeks of searching, they had not found anything, not a single single trace of evidence that related to William. It was like he literally just vanished. So obviously during their investigations, they were questioning witnesses and families, neighbors, anyone that could have any sort of information on the case. During their investigation, they questioned over 1,000 people, over 700 of which were persons of interest at the time they questioned them. But despite all of this and all of these people they questioned, they only had about a handful of main suspects during their entire search. So anyway, obviously they were speaking to family, asking them all of these questions, where he could be, what they were doing that day, anything that could help them in the case. And his grandmother and his mother both reported that at about 9 a.m. they saw two cars directly across from the house, and they were parked on the street between two driveways. One of the cars was described as a dark grey older model sedan, and one was described as an old white station wagon, and the cars were parked like directly behind one another. And the reason that it was so suspicious is, one, because the driver's side windows were down, which is kind of weird, but also it was a dead-end road. There was no reason for them to be there. Nobody knows why these cars were on the street. Nobody recognized the cars. A few other neighbors said that they saw the cars, and nobody owned up to knowing who these cars were from, so that was really suspicious. So that was at around 9 a.m. that they saw that car, and then William's grandmother said that a few minutes after that, the two kids were riding their bikes in the driveway when she saw another car, which was like a dark grey or greenish sedan, and it came up down the road. It did a U-turn in somebody's driveway and then it left. There was also another vehicle that was spotted by some neighbors, and they said that it exited Benaroon Drive at around the same time that William disappeared. And this car was a white four-wheel drive, and it was also seen to be speeding around the Kendall area. This information though wasn't released for about a year. It was a part of their tactic, I guess, because they wanted to keep it private, look for the owners of these vehicles so that they didn't alert them that they were looking for their vehicles. Which I guess, like, there's pros and cons to that. Like, I understand they might not want to give any indications to these people so that they don't get rid of their cars, but at the same time, you know, if it was this four-wheel drive that was speeding away, they were speeding, so they could have felt guilty, they could have had evidence in their car, and whether or not they thought someone saw them, if there was evidence in their car, they could have burned it anyway. So now during this time, during the search, during the investigations, people weren't really hearing a lot about his family, which a lot of people thought was really suspicious, because in cases like these, or in cases where loved ones go missing, and especially in cases where a child goes missing, you expect them to be actively seen participating in the searches and the investigations, and you expect to see them looking sad and distraught and pleading in the media for any information, for someone to bring them back or for them to come back. So people thought this was weird. They were searching for answers and they couldn't find any. They didn't know why these people were keeping their identities a secret, and they weren't seen looking for their son, and they started to point the finger at them. Nobody knew who they were. If they did interviews, they hid their face, they changed their voices, they didn't release their names. Nobody had any clue as to who these people were. They were always saying that they couldn't reveal their identities because of legal restrictions, and journalists were saying that they knew who they were and they couldn't say who they were either because, again, legal restrictions. It wasn't actually until August of 2017 that a judge ruled that this information could be released, and this information was that William was actually a foster child, and the family that he was with at the time of his disappearance was his foster family. He was actually put into foster care when he was just a baby. His father, Brendan Collins, and his mother, Katie Tyrrell, were having domestic disputes before he was even born. They were living with Brendan's brother or stepbrother at the time, and he ended up leaving because the police had to be called to the house numerous times. When William was born, the disputes continued, although he wasn't harmed in any way as far as anybody knows. but his parents were ordered to take domestic violence courses, and they were ordered to be separated from each other. The Department of Family and Community Service issued them with a warning, and then they were really worried that William was going to get taken off them, so they tried to hide him. They hid him for a few months, I think it was like 3 months, and then they were spotted at a video store, and William was taken into foster care. He was then taken in by his foster family when he was about 9 months old, the one that he was living with at the time of his disappearance, and his parents did try to get him back. I think they spent like something like $4,500 trying to get him back, unsuccessfully, and they were able to visit him. I think they were able to visit him like every 7 to 8 weeks at a local shopping center for about an hour at a time, but the foster care was intended to be permanent, and his biological mother also spoke about the fact that she knew that this foster arrangement was intended to be permanent. So honestly, it's really unfortunate for the foster family that while all of this is going on and they're grieving for their missing son, that they weren't able to say what was going on, and they had people making all these accusations against them and people pointing the finger at them. But they were cleared of having anything to do with the disappearance. They were absolutely heartbroken about the whole thing, and there was, I think it was a 60 Minutes interview where they were just absolutely distraught. They were heartbroken. The interviewer didn't even know what to say. He was, emotional for them, and you could tell just how genuinely they loved and cared for him, and how genuinely distraught and heartbroken they were over his disappearance.
I had no legs. I just collapsed. We had to go back to our house, our family, without him. It was heart-wrenching. And I'd lie in his bed, and I'd cut a little Tara, and I would just pray that he wasn't scared, and he was somebody who was loving him.
I apologise.
Sorry.
No, you don't say sorry. I don't know how you're doing it.
We can't live forever like this. Just give him back.
Do the right thing.
Give him back. Take him to a church.
Drop
Take
him
him to
off.
a police station. Take him to a school. Give him to someone. Bring him back.
There were also some theories that his biological parents may have done it because, as I mentioned, they did try and hide him for 3 months. They also had kind of shady backgrounds with the domestic violence, and his dad, after his disappearance, I believe, started getting into drugs. And his mother had been in trouble with the law, I think, but they were also completely cleared of having anything to do with it. Also, his mother recently, or I don't know how recently it was, but his mother did come out and do an interview, which obviously if she had anything to do with it, I doubt she would be coming out and doing interviews. It's kind of like just drawing attention to herself, and I think if she did anything, she wouldn't want that.
Do you just feel like you're on your own?
Yes. Well, I have my 2 younger boys, but yeah.
Why have you isolated yourself?
Of course, I felt like I was the worst mum in the world.
It must be hell.
It is. It's the worst.
Now, one suspect that police did name, and there weren't really many suspects that police named at all, and it was a guy named Bill Spedding. Now, Bill Spedding was a 63-year-old washing repairman, and he was an alleged pedophile. He had been charged with 2 counts of sexually penetrating a child under 10, and he also had 5 counts of indecent assault between 1983 and 1987. So the reason that he was connected to William Tyrrell at all, or was even looked into as a suspect, is because at around the same time as William disappeared, he was fixing William's grandmother's washing machine. So about 4 days before William's disappearance, he had gone in to fix the washing machine, but he hadn't been able to repair it because there was a specific part that he needed, and he needed to go and order it and wait for it to come in before he could install it. So when William and his family got there, his mother called the repairman for his grandmother because she hadn't been able to wash clothes in 4 days, and said, you know, what's going on? Do you know when you'll have the part in to be able to come and fix it? And he claims that he didn't go back to the house until a few days after the disappearance to fix the washing machine. But some people thought that maybe he had come on the day that William's mother called, and that he saw William and saw the opportunity to take him instead of going in to fix it, and that's why he didn't come back for a few days afterwards, because, you know, he wanted to give it some time. Now, Bill maintains his innocence. He actually came out with a video on social media saying that he was innocent, that he didn't go back to the house for a few days after, and that he urges anybody with any information to come forward. So,
hello, I'm Bill Spedding. My wife Margaret and I offer the Tyrrell family our sincere commiserations in the tragic event of William's disappearance. I wish to state that I have had no involvement whatsoever in the disappearance of William Tyrrell. I have noted in the media that some events have been reported inaccurately. The media have reported that I was supposed to attend the Tyrrell house on the 12th of September 2014, this being the day of William's disappearance. I wish to make it perfectly clear that this claim is completely false. I appeal to anyone who may have any further information to urge them to contact Crime Stoppers on 1300 333 000. Thank you very much.
I don't want to put any false information out there. I personally don't think that he did it. I think the only reason that he was brought into it was because of his past. Now, during their investigations, police also revealed the fact that they were looking into a suspected paedophile ring. They questioned a group called Grandparents as Parents Again, and 2 of the members in this group were actually convicted child sex offenders. And what was actually crazy is that during this time, they also found out that there was about 20 registered sex offenders in the area that nobody really knew about. So that was kind of a real shock to the community. The former president of the group, Paul Nick Ford, he was one of the 2 members that was a convicted sex offender, and he maintains his innocence and also says that he was not part of any paedophile ring. The other member who was also a convicted sex offender was a man named Tony Jones, and he lived about 20 minutes outside of Kendall at the time of the disappearance. Now, he also maintained his innocence, and the 2 men the police stopped questioning them for a little while, said that they weren't looking into this as a line of inquiry anymore, but there have been very recent updates with Tony Jones specifically. Now, this year, actually very, very recently in September, there was a car that was discovered abandoned deep in the bush. It was found in Bushland, which was just a short drive from where William disappeared from. Now, this car is believed to have belonged to Tony Jones because the person that found it said it was the same make and the same model that Jones drove. Now, the sketchy thing about this is that by the time police got there, the car had been flipped and it had been burnt out, so it would be set on fire. A woman named Katerina, who had been living with Jones at the time of the disappearance, said that she would not be surprised if he had set this car alight. There was also some discrepancies in his alibi, which made him extremely sus. Now, a relative of his said at the time of William's disappearance, he had gone out to the bush to collect scrap metal. But Tony had said that he was helping their neighbor with the hot water system, which the neighbor actually said wasn't true, that he wasn't helping them with their hot water system. There was another source that said he was out with a chainsaw that he had borrowed from a local council. Now, in 2015, he was actually convicted of the aggravated assault of a 3-year-old girl. He was convicted or sentenced to a maximum of 3 years, but he was released in January of this year. He had previously been charged with assaulting women and children, theft, drug possession, and escaping from police. So very shady character, and I will definitely be looking forward to see where this lead takes it. Maybe he is a suspect and this actually does have something to do with William's disappearance, but we just don't know now. So hopefully I will be able to do an update on this case sometime soon. But that is all of the information that I have for you guys. Please, if I've missed any information, any theories that you guys think are possibilities, please leave them in the comments down below. And hopefully I will see you guys in my next video tomorrow. Bye.